I had just returned from shopping when I saw someone standing motionless at the front door. I was so shocked that I dropped my shopping bags. It was my daughter, Ivana, who was supposed to be on her honeymoon. "What are you doing here? Where's Lloyd? What about your honeymoon?" I asked in disbelief. "I came back alone," Ivana replied, her voice breaking before she began to cry. "I'm Emily, a 58-year-old housewife, and my husband, Lloyd, is 60. This story is about my daughter, Ivana. She had only left for her honeymoon 2 days ago, yet here she was, back home with her suitcase." Feeling confused, I brought Ivana inside. Placing her pink suitcase by the door, I led her into the living room, sat her down, and gave her a glass of iced tea. As she sipped it cautiously, I started asking questions. "So, you came back from Hawaii all alone?" I asked, trying to understand. "Yes," she whispered. This made no sense. Lloyd, her husband, always seemed like a reliable and courteous man. He had a good job and a promising future. We had celebrated their marriage just a few days ago. Then Ivana told me the shocking truth. There was another woman there. "What?" I gasped. "On your honeymoon? With another woman? Are you serious?" "Yes, we ended up spending time together, all 3 of us," Ivana said, her voice trembling. Hearing this made my blood boil. Without thinking, I grabbed my phone and found Lloyd's number. "Wait, ma'am, don't." Ivana tried to stop me, but I ignored her. How dare he do this to her? I called him, and after a few rings, Lloyd answered. "What's the meaning of this?" I shouted. "You're spending your honeymoon with another woman? How could you do this to Ivana?" Lloyd replied in an uninterested tone. "She's my sister, my actual sister. What are you even talking about?" "Your sister," I stammered, completely thrown off. "Yes, my sister who lives in Hawaii. She couldn't come to the wedding because her child had an ear infection. There's nothing shady going on," Lloyd explained. I felt utterly embarrassed. Ivana sat there silently with her head down. I didn't know what to say anymore. After Lloyd explained that a woman with him was his sister, he added, "Either way, I can reach Ivana. Since she's with you, let her know that I'll be staying in Hawaii for the week as planned. When I return, I expect a full apology." Then, with a sigh, he added, "Women always overreact, flying back to Boston in a fit of emotion. Is it hormones or something?" His comment was rude and insulting. I was furious. Before I could respond, he hung up abruptly. I turned to Ivana, still trying to make sense of everything. What exactly happened in Hawaii? Ivana looked down, clearly upset. "Mom, I think you jumped the gun with that phone call. Let me explain." She told me that as soon as they arrived in Hawaii, Lloyd's sister, Saya, was waiting for them at the hotel. Lloyd had said, "My sister is going to put you through some special training to see if you're worthy of being my partner." Ivana had been shocked. The honeymoon isn't supposed to be a training camp. I wanted to visit the beaches in Mauna Loa, not take lessons in housekeeping. But Lloyd dismissed her concerns, saying, "This is why we came to Hawaii. Once my sister's training is over, we can go wherever we like. Of course, all 3 of us." Saya then took over. "Enough talk. From today, I'll teach you everything you need to know about being a good wife. Let's head to my house." What followed was bizarre. At Saya's home, which was cluttered with children's toys, Ivana's training began. First, she was told to clean the scattered toys, then she had to scrub the shower and clean the toilet. Meanwhile, Saya and Lloyd sat in the living room, chatting and relaxing. Ivana paused, her voice trembling. It felt more like I was being used as free labor than anything else. Isn't this harassment? Hearing her story made my blood boil. This wasn't a honeymoon. It was a humiliation. When I asked Ivana for more details, she broke down into tears. "They made me cook dinner for 6 people's eyes family of 4. Plus me and Lloyd using only what was in their fridge," she sobbed. "I've never cooked for that many people before. I thought I'd learn to cook with Lloyd after we got married. I didn't even know where to start." She wiped her eyes and continued, "I found some eggplants in the fridge and tried to search for recipes on my phone. But Saya snatched it away and said, You should be able to cook without looking things up. Using your phone is unacceptable. She called me a failure and said I needed more intense training. Then she told me we'd be staying at her house for the entire vacation so she could teach me. Ivana's voice cracked as she said, "The whole vacation? Just for this?" I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my phone and flew back home, crying the whole way. Hearing this made me furious. Ivana had been so excited for their honeymoon. The hotel had a sparkling pool, a gorgeous ocean view, and they had planned to enjoy Hawaiian poke bowls and plate lunches. But Lloyd and Saya crushed her dreams so easily. Tears streaming down her face, Ivana suddenly suggested something. I listened carefully and decided to support her with all my strength. After the honeymoon fiasco, Lloyd called Ivana. "We're coming over tomorrow to discuss how we're going to live from now on," he said. Ivana, confused, asked, "What do you mean by that?" "You failed as my partner," Lloyd replied. "Saya said you're a disaster in the kitchen. We need to talk about what's next. Think carefully about where you went wrong." That was Edie was livid. His arrogance was infuriating, but them coming over actually worked to our advantage. I decided to handle the situation calmly. The next day, Lloyd and Saya arrived. As soon as they walked in, Lloyd smugly asked, "So, has Ivana reflected on her failures?" He was full of arrogance, a far cry from the serious man I'd first met. I stayed calm and invited them into the living room. "Let's begin the partner test," I said loudly, signaling my husband, who was waiting in the other room. My husband walked in confidently, holding a yoga mat. "First, we're going to test physical fitness. Core strength is essential for protecting a family," he said with a grin. At 60, my husband had started going to the gym 3 times a week, guided by a personal trainer. He looked strong and fit, his chest solid from regular workouts. "All right," he continued, "push-ups on this mat. Lower yourself slowly for 3 seconds, hold, then push back up. That's 1 rep. If you can hold for 3 seconds, it won't count. Let's see what you've got." Lloyd, who clearly hadn't exercised in years, looked completely out of his depth. When Lloyd and Sia insisted on testing Yana's ability to be a good partner, things took an unexpected turn. My husband and I decided to give them a taste of their own medicine. First, my husband challenged Lloyd to a push-up contest. He confidently explained the correct form, lowered himself into position, and began doing push-ups with ease. Lloyd, on the other hand, collapsed onto the floor after barely attempting one. He lay there helpless, like a squashed frog, while my husband continued effortlessly. Next, it was Sia's turn. I pointed out that if she expected Ivana to be perfect, she should prove her skills too. I led her to the bathroom, which I had purposely left messy, and asked her to clean it. At first, Sia tried to argue, but I reminded her how she made Ivana do chores. Reluctantly, she got to work. An hour later, Sia returned, saying she was done. I inspected her work and pointed out water streaks on the walls and a cloudy mirror. I reminded her that Ivana had seen the mold in her house, proving Sia wasn't in any position to criticize others. But it wasn't over. I brought Sia to the craft room and handed her a sewing machine, asking her to make a simple bag. Sia frowned, admitting she didn't even know how to thread the machine. Ivana had to step in and show her. When Sia finally started sewing, the stitches were crooked and messy. By the end, Sia and Lloyd were exhausted and embarrassed. It became clear that they had no right to judge Ivana or demand she meet impossible standards. Watching them struggle was satisfying, and Ivana and I couldn't help but share a quiet smile as the tables turned. I couldn't help but laugh as Sia struggled with the sewing machine. Her stitches were uneven, some too deep, others completely misaligned. Even Ivana was holding back her laughter. "Ivana, show her how it's done," I said. "Sure," Ivana replied, stepping in, "but usually, you should start with a securing stage at the edge first." She operated the sewing machine smoothly, stitching perfect, straight lines. Ivana had loved sewing since she was young, having been in the sewing club during middle and high school. This was second nature to her. Watching Ivana's skill, Sia grumbled, "Well, You could just pay someone at a craft store to make it back for you. I couldn't let that slide. Really? Then what's the difference between outsourcing your sewing to a craft store and replacing cooking with store-bought meals? Everyone has things they can't do and things they need to work on. Stop making excuses when it's convenient for you. Leaving Sia to reflect on that, I went downstairs, where Lloyd was still sprawled on the floor, unable to move after the push-ups. My husband stood next to him, striking a triumphant muscle pose. "All right, let's have a talk," I said. Lloyd somehow managed to get up, and Sia joined him, still looking humiliated. "The four of you, my husband, Ivana, and it's Saturday across from them in the living room. Take a look at this," I said, placing her sewing projects on the table. Ivana's neat bag was flawless, while Sia's was a wobbly mess. Lloyd stared at his sister's disastrous stitching. Stunned into silence, Sia's hands trembled as she realized just how bad it looked. "It's unbelievable that you two acted like you were in charge, while only making Ivana do all the training," my husband said, turning to Lloyd. "And you, Lloyd, you've been talking so much about what women should do, but maybe it's time to question how well you're doing as a man yourself." Ivana then spoke up, her voice steady but firm. "I think this is a good time to bring it out," she said, pulling out a set of documents. "It's not a quick divorce or anything, but I just can't go on with you anymore. I'm glad I realized this sooner rather than later." Both Lloyd and Sia were stunned. Their eyes widened as they scrambled for words, but nothing coherent came out. "Wait, Ivana," Lloyd finally blurted. "I was thinking of forgiving you if you showed some remorse. Sure, I can cook, but that's not something I need to apologize for." Ivana shook her head. "This isn't about cooking. You devoted our honeymoon to training and brought your sister into our marriage. It's all too absurd. I can't be with you anymore." She picked up the pen and started signing the papers. Sia panicked. "Wait, this is my fault. All I did was point out your flaws." Ivana calmly responded, "I never said I can cook. I plan to learn, just like I'm sure there are things you'll learn too. But deciding someone's worth based on your convenience and standards is wrong." I stepped in to deliver the final blow. "You can't even sew or clean properly, yet you act so high and mighty. On top of that, you ruined the honeymoon and treated Ivana like a servant. You have no one to blame but yourselves." The room fell silent. Lloyd and Sia had nothing left to say. "I'm too embarrassed to be related to you," I said firmly. "Just sign the divorce papers and leave." And so, Ivana finally came back home to us, leaving behind the mess of her failed marriage. Sia also ended up divorced not because of her inability to keep house, but because she refused to take responsibility for her actions. She constantly harassed Ivana, acting like she was Lloyd's partner or some sort of parental figure, all while ignoring her own flaws. That's the very definition of lacking personal responsibility. Meanwhile, Lloyd's inconsiderate personality started causing problems at work. He made mistake after mistake, and his careless comments to co-workers only made things worse. Once, he even said to a female colleague, "These documents are a mess. Are you slacking off just because you're not feeling well?" His insensitivity led to severe disciplinary action, and he was suspended from work. Despite all this, Lloyd kept messaging Ivana, begging her to come back. "If you reflect and give me another chance, I'm sure I can fix this. I might even get my position back at work," he wrote, but his messages showed no real remorse, and Ivana wasn't having it. "That's not going to happen," she replied. "I'm getting married." With that, she cut off all communication with him. Yes, Ivana is set to remarry in 6 months. Her new fiancé is also a businessman, but unlike Lloyd, he's kind, easygoing, and grounded. He's into fitness, especially AB rolling, and has a fit physique. When they eat together, they love talking about topics like protein and bodybuilding. Now, Ivana has taken a serious interest in cooking. She joins me in the kitchen and laughs about her early struggles. "Back then, I could barely make scrambled eggs or sandwiches for work," she recalls. "It's okay," I reassure her. "You'll get better with time." With that, I seasoned the dish, measuring everything by instinct. Ivana smiled, clearly excited to keep learning.